Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 315 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's show was recorded on March 20th. It is a conversation about coronavirus with Jenny Smith. At the end of the episode, I've listed some important talking points from the CDC website. Make sure you get to those. Please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Please always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan, becoming bold with insulin, or anything else that might come up. You know what I mean. Jenny Smith is a registered and licensed dietitian, a certified diabetes educator, and a person who's been living with type 1 diabetes for over 3 decades. Jenny is the exact same person you hear on the Diabetes Pro Tip series, during the Defining Diabetes episodes, and of course, Ask Scott and Jenny. Jenny works at Integrated Diabetes, and if you want to check her out or even hire her, you can do that. Jenny's email address is right in the link of these show notes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. The Contour Next One is, without a doubt, the finest, most accurate blood glucose meter my daughter has ever used in the entire time she's had type 1 diabetes. Go to contournextone.com to find out if you're eligible for an absolutely free meter today. The podcast is also sponsored by Touched by Type 1. When you go to touchedbytype1.org, you're going to see an organization that is working towards a cure, supporting people with type 1 diabetes, and putting on maybe one of the greatest dance shows I've ever witnessed. Go find out more about them. They're supporting people with type 1 diabetes all over the world. You might be one of them. Go check them out. And if you don't need that support and you want to help support someone else, this is a great way. Touchedbytype1.org is a great way to do that. Get yourself an absolutely free, no obligation demo of the Omnipod sent to your house today. Go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. When you get there, fill out a little bit of information, and Omnipod is going to send you an absolutely free, no obligation demo of the Omnipod. You'll be able to try it on, wear it, and see what you think. And of course, to find out more about the Dexcom G6 continuous glucose monitor, the exact same CGM that my daughter wears today, go to dexcom.com/juicebox. Let's get to the show.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
How are you today?
We're hanging in there. How about you?
Yeah, I'd call it the same. I would assume Cole's home from school.
Yeah, we didn't even make it through. Oh my gosh, we didn't even make it through his.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was all covered up.
No, that's okay.
I keep a little Post-it note there.
I don't want to know what you're doing with your computer in your private time. It's fine. So Cole was in Florida for his college tournament. He got there Friday. We got there Friday. On Sunday, he asked us for a Zyrtec, thinking that his allergies were coming on, a runny nose. On Monday, he asked for another one. Kelly and Arden left on Monday to go home. I stayed behind. Tuesday was his day off. And when I picked him up late Tuesday morning to take him to lunch, I was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Nah, I don't feel right." And I was like, "Okay." So I took him out to eat and he didn't look good. So I said, "Hey, go back to my hotel and lay down for a while." So 3 hours later, he woke up and he woke up to an email from his coach that said, "We're having an emergency meeting to talk about the season." So I had to hump him back like a half an hour to his hotel. He was feeling better from sleeping, but, he didn't look magically better to me.
Right.
And they announced that the season was going to be suspended. That's what they knew at the time. And he definitely didn't feel well still. So now he's like asking me, kind of like trying to be like sly. He's like, I couldn't have the coronavirus, right? And I was like, I mean, you could, I said, what are your symptoms? At that point, he had a sore throat, had a runny nose, and I was like, well, you don't have a fever, so
right.
Blah, blah, blah. So the next day comes Wednesday. he ends up pitching his face off against the number 1 ranked team in the country in Division 3. Just pitches these 2 amazing innings, comes out of the game ends, he gets on a bus and goes back to the hotel. I'm supposed to pick him up for dinner, and he texts me, he goes, hey, I'm not going to go to dinner, but come over here. He's like, I felt like I was going to throw up on the bus. And so I think he used every ounce of
energy,
everything he had, and realized that he was sick. So on the way over there, I just stopped at a Walgreens, and I'm like, let me just get a thermometer.
Yeah.
Stuck the thermometer in his mouth. He was,
let's be a dad.
Yeah, 100.4. I took him right to urgent care.
Oh my God.
Right now he's in urgent care with a mask on, and they swab him for flu. He doesn't have the flu. And the guy looks at his throat and says, listen, you have strep. I can see it. He's like, I'm going to give you an antibiotic. And I said, are you going to swab him for it? He goes, man, this is strep throat. And I was like, okay, fingers crossed and all.
Right.
But I took him out of the hotel where the kids were, the poor kid had to leave his team.
Yeah.
I just basically shuttered, just put it
Bye-bye.
Yeah. And he didn't play the rest of the week, obviously, but the antibiotics did it. That's exactly, he had strep. Yeah. So, but in the moment, it was weird. Yeah. And when he went back to watch the games, from outside of the dugout in the last 2 days, people were, they're like, hey, how's he doing? We just want to make sure he's all right. But that's not really what they meant. No. What they really meant was, hey,
he's got strep. We took him in. That's what he had.
That's exactly what I was saying. I was like, oh my God. Are you allowed out of your house? What's the Wisconsin thing so far?
So the Wisconsin thing is beyond the multiple levels of weather we have happening. It was raining before, and now it's fuzzy snowing. Sorry, I'm looking out my window.
That's okay.
But being trapped in the house, no, I mean, we can go outside. Our kids are out of school. The governor originally had a timeline of April 6th. Yeah, but just 2 days ago, we got another email from our school district specifically stating that according to the new guidelines, school is delayed or canceled indefinitely. Mm-hmm. We don't know, which my husband and I are like, okay, that means that Oscar's just not going back to school this year.
That's what I think.
We will be homeschooling. And I mean, the good thing is that, working from home, I'm here.
Right.
But the bad thing is that working from home, I don't have a clinic to go to, so I have work that continues, which is very good. It's good that people can utilize this type of telemedicine,
right,
to stay up, especially as things change and things happen and there are more questions that come in. But it also makes navigating my day a little bit more interesting.
Okay, we're talking about the coronavirus today. So here is Omnipod's website if you want to know more about how they're handling coronavirus. It's at myomnipod.com/coronavirus. So if you want to get a free no obligation demo, go to myomnipod.com/juicebox. But if you want to find out about the coronavirus and how Omnipod is handling it, myomnipod.com/coronavirus. There they will tell you how Insulin is responding to the coronavirus outbreak. They're going to tell you if coronavirus is impacting Insulin's ability to produce its products, what sterilization processes are in place to ensure the pods are safe. And they talk about reordering. I'm going to jump through it really quickly. Insulet continues to be vigilant, monitoring and managing the global impact of the coronavirus outbreak. So that's how they start to talk about their response. They say they also have a comprehensive plan in place to ensure the safety and well-being of their employees, and they are going to continue to deliver Omnipods to those who depend on the product to manage their type 1. At this time, Insulet does not anticipate any product supply issues. Pretty cool here how they talk about the sterilization process. Why don't you go check it out if you're interested? myomnipod.com/coronavirus. Next thing I have to share with you is a lovely email that I got from Rick Doubleday. Rick is the Chief Commercial Officer at Dexcom. Rick sent me a note and said, at this moment, there are not any interruptions to Dexcom's ability to produce and supply product. However, we do anticipate near-term delays in both customer service and tech support as we transition more employees to a remote work environment. Wait times on the phone will be much longer than usual. We ask that customers please only contact Dexcom support for urgent requests at this time. Dexcom is committed to communicating with their customers as the situation evolves, and customers should visit dexcom.com/coronavirus for latest updates. So that's directly from Rick. Now, if you want to get a Dexcom system going, go to dexcom.com/juicebox. But if you're already using it and you want to know how Dexcom is reacting to the outbreak, check that out right there. Now, when you start looking around the internet for a little break from all this, go to touchedbytype1.org. There you're going to find an organization with a mission to elevate awareness of type 1 diabetes, raise funds to find a cure, and to inspire those with diabetes to thrive. They've got great programs and services, all kinds of stuff, and hopefully I'll be there in May speaking if, we're allowed to travel again and get together with people. But, that's a long way off. I have a good feeling about that. Anyway, touchedbytype1.org. Check them out today. Last but not least, contournext1.com. That's where you can check out the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. There's a little yellow tab at the top that says, get a free Contour Next One meter today. Check that out. See if you're eligible. This meter also has a wonderful app that works both with Apple and Android. Really helps take your data to a new level. ContourNext1.com. All of these links can be found in your show notes and at juiceboxpodcast.com. All right, let's get back to Jenny.
My husband is on family medical leave right now from his company. They allowed employees who have family members in home or whatnot that could be at increased risk to take their family medical leave.
Okay.
So he chose to do that. I mean, he sees thousands of people a day at work, and he was like,
yeah,
I'm just going to be at home with you guys. So
plus, I'm sure his company's looking for some people not to come in anyway. They're probably,
correct.
Yeah,
exactly. So, that kind of works out for whatever limited time he can use that for. I mean, he'll have to go back to work at some point.
Well, either that
so we'll figure it out.
We're going to become a socialist nation pretty soon.
Right.
One or the other.
But I mean, it's interesting because, grocery stores and everything, those things are still open. I expect for limited time.
Yeah.
I haven't really looked at the websites to see, are you still 24 hours? I would expect probably not. But yesterday I thought I got the brilliant idea from actually somebody I was working with. And she's like, oh, I just go online and I just order all my food and I just pick it up at the door. And I was like, why did I not think about doing that?
Why am I not doing that? Yeah.
Oh, so I went online and I did that. Oh, the next time I could pick up groceries at the grocery store that we most often go to is Monday, March 30th.
Oh.
At 6 p.m.
Weeks.
I'm like, I'm out of all of the fresh stuff that I eat every single day. I'm like, I'm not living just on frozen broccoli. So
we picked one person. So one of us goes to the grocery store. Nobody, the other person's not going.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we're supposed to go move Cole's stuff out of the dorm. I don't even know if they're going to let us do that. We'll wait and see. But no, I think this is going to go on for months.
Oh,
I don't think the kids are going back to school this year. And everybody is now seeing, for all the things we talk about that are important, if you can't walk outside without getting sick, nothing else matters,
Right.
So it's really, really something else. There's that one model out of England that says between 600,000 and 2.2 million Americans could die in the next year and a half or something like that, which is, it's funny. It's a staggering number, right?
Right.
And at the same time, my son said to me, because he's younger and he doesn't feel like he's going to get sick.
Right.
He goes, how many people die anyway? And I was like, what? He goes, before this. And I said, about 150,000 people a day worldwide die every day. And he's like, so is 2 million a lot? And I said, it is if it's you. Yeah.
Exactly.
There's a way to look at the world personally, and there's a way to look at the world,
globally.
Yeah, globally.
Yeah.
And those two things are, they're very different. So
they are. Yeah. Exactly. I know.
I stopped my 20-year-old son from going to play basketball. He was like, we're going to go play basketball. I'm like, you're not.
You're not.
Yeah. I
was
like, no.
No, you're not.
Go warm up your PlayStation. It's your dream come true. You can play it as much as you want. So,
So we have everything closed, essentially.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
other than pharmacies and that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so let me first talk with you about this. I think it's just important right now with the timing to put out an episode for as long as it needs to be, if it's 10 minutes or a half an hour, whatever it has to be, talking about how to manage through a respiratory illness. Because, it's going to happen, and we can at least have a baseline idea. We don't know what this, what do you call it, by the way? Do you call it COVID-19 or the coronavirus when you're just chatting about it at home?
I've just been calling it the coronavirus because I feel like all of these extra names to things, it's confusing in my brain. So I'm like, it's the coronavirus, whatever they want to call it beyond that, fine. But
we definitely go with corona here because in the Monsters Incorporated movie when the sock touches the thing and they yell 2319, 2319. So when people say COVID-19, Kelly hears 2319 and it starts a whole comedy routine in the house. So we don't say that like that.
That's funny.
Yeah. So we go coronavirus too.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we don't see, I've seen, I think 2 people with type 1 on social media who have had it so far, but haven't really heard much from them. We're starting, you're not really hearing from people yet who have recovered from it because those recoveries have happened overseas. We're still in the spot where you're going to see, today is the 20th of March. We had a big increase yesterday in diagnosis, and I'm going to guess it's going to double today because we're now starting to see numbers from, people who were tested 5, 8, 10 days ago.
Right.
So
there was a really good post done, and you might have read it. The Washington Post did a really good article that had graphical of dots interacting with each other and how, no social isolation versus minimal versus extreme social isolation and how much difference that makes. But you still get a blowout of people. It's just slower and it decreases that that U graph essentially of how many people will potentially get it. I think the problem will be until we have hopefully a vaccination for it at a small level. And I think this is why it draws out how many months we're going to see things closed and social interaction minimized and things, because until we have a vaccination, it's just going to keep floating around.
Yeah, it's not
somebody's
stop.
always going to bump into somebody that bumps into somebody that bumps into somebody that hasn't had it yet. And, they don't, with it being new from everything that I've read, the human body doesn't know what to do with it really yet. Or how to form the antibodies and things that it would normally form for the typical cold and the typical flu. And, I see this again. I had this, 2 years ago. Now I can handle it better again.
Yeah. I think a lot of people mistakenly believe that it's going to have a season like the flu and we'll get to a date and you just won't hear about it anymore. And that, I think, listen, I don't know anything other than what I'm paying attention to, but I just had Dr. Adam Nadelman on the show the other day, and this episode with you is going to go up right after that. He talked, I brought up the Washington Post article, and before I could tell him it was out of the Washington Post, he goes, was that in the Washington Post? And I was like, yeah, we've all seen that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's such a wonderful visualization of how, spread happens. But I would say this is going to last 2 full corona seasons, whatever this time's going to be. And then I think there's going to be a break, and then I think it's going to come around again. And then it'll probably be a normal part of life, like the flu and,
right,
SARS and MERS and all that other stuff. But it just spreads so much more quickly and easily than things in the past have. And so you're just seeing it overwhelm everything.
Right. I think that in terms of, diabetes, I think people with diabetes or even people with other chronic health conditions where it's become a habit to be more careful about things. You change your pump site or you take an injection, you clean the site. You wash your hands or, maybe you wash your hands before you do a finger stick or you put your continuous monitor site on or those kinds of things. So we already are a little bit ahead of the curve of just paying attention to hygiene cautiously in that sense, But then in terms of just management, the only one that I read about online with type 1 specific was, as you mentioned, a guy over in the the UK, I believe he was from. He had gone on a ski trip in like December or early January or something with a group of friends, and a good majority of the group had coronavirus. Right. He himself got tested because others in his group, he was positive, and his symptoms actually didn't show up for several days after he was tested positive.
Okay.
And he has type 1. And he actually, in his article, he mentioned the fact that it wasn't so much the diabetes management that was the hard part about it. It was, he described it as like uncontrollable respiratory coughing. He said it was just so unbelievable that the only thing that helped was some type of medication his doctor prescribed him and he went and he picked up.
To stop the coughing.
To stop the actual coughing.
Okay.
But he said otherwise, and of course this is an N of 1 experience, right? Everybody's experience with an illness is a little bit different, but I think it gives good information that if you were fairly healthy outside of just your diabetes and you have fairly good blood sugar control, which is the huge key in a lot of this, then your management strategy for the illness piece of it shouldn't be that much different, if anything.
Right.
You're going to likely need, I mean, most people with a respiratory illness who have a fever or an infection, it's going to increase your insulin needs. So.
Well, it's interesting because obviously this is a new virus, for us, and no one's really seen it before, but I've been managing Arden's blood sugar in one way or another for, over 13 years. It's probably coming up on 14 years pretty soon. Viruses don't really change her insulin needs greatly. Now, I've seen it differently for other people, but I just don't see a mass difference. I have to share this somewhere, so I'm going to do it here. So Vicky's been on the show before. She talked about eating, what's the thing when you don't have any carbs? I can't believe that word just fell out of my head. Like
ketogenic?
Ketogenic. Vicky was on to talk about that. She and I were speaking this past weekend about something different. And she said something just hilarious. She's like, I'm not afraid of this virus. She goes, my immune system has already killed my pancreas and my thyroid. It could take this coronavirus, no problem.
That's funny.
I was like, that's hilarious. But I think a lot of people with type 1 feel that way too, a little bit, right? Like there are, it's not everybody, but you talk to a lot of people who are like, I don't get sick that often. Like my immune system is really great. I'm incredibly healthy with the exception of the fact that my pancreas doesn't work.
Right. Honestly, I was until I had kids who started going to, one child who started going to school. Right. I rarely had even the common winter cold. Yeah. Rarely. But, and even from that standpoint, I would say when you talk about, Arden's insulin needs don't really change so significantly. Everybody is a little bit different. Of course. And I think the other thing to consider is the severity of the illness and at what point you are in the illness, right? Because I know myself, with just a typical cold, like the sniffles, I might feel a little under the weather, but other than that, I'm going about my normal daily. I'm not laying in bed, like blowing my nose like minute after minute after minute. That typical cold, I maybe need a little bit more insulin, like maybe 5 or 10% more. It's not even as significantly noticeable. And if I can remain at least moderately active, I actually don't even notice a difference in my insulin needs. Whereas if I have a really nasty cold, my insulin needs will go up 40% from a basal level to start with. And then if my post meals still aren't, I'll adjust my ratios too.
And there are illnesses that Arden needs more insulin for.
Sure.
But it's those ones that are just sort of like she's got a little cough or her throat's a little sore or her head's a little stuffy. Those don't seem to hit her. But if she gets knocked over by an illness, when the body ache stuff happens and when the rundown thing happens, then you start getting, like you said, you stop moving around as much. You're more dehydrated. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into that.
Well, and I think you bring up you said hydrated, right? And we've talked about hydration piece just in general before, but when we talk about a respiratory illness specifically, I'm sure we've all seen the Mucinex commercials, right?
Mm-hmm.
The little like blob of like mucus, like, ha ha ha, I'm like invading your lungs and your nose and I'm not going to let you sleep kind of thing. One of the biggest things to do is stay hydrated. More so if you're the person who's like, I drink 8 cups of water a day, or I have 5 water bottles or jugs of water a day, you know what? Double that.
Yeah.
Because that fluid will help to move things faster through the system and keep that stickiness down from the mucus standpoint.
Yeah. Listen, plain words, if you have thick snot and you hydrate yourself more, the snot will get thinner. And
that's right.
That's all. And so it's just, it's not something it's not hard to follow. It's hard to drink the water when you don't feel well. Right. That's the whole thing. It's difficult to maintain these good practices when you feel like a truck ran you over and then backed up to see what it hit. That really is the problem.
There are some other things that are even not like pharmaceutical, but things, I think it's the tea company Traditional Medicinals makes a tea. It's called Throat Coat. Mm-hmm. There's another one that they make. It's called Breathe Easy. All of them, they work very well. I've used them in, a respiratory kind of bug. So beyond going to your local pharmacy and grabbing everything off of the shelf, some of those things to kind of have stocked in your cupboard as a backup. Peppermint and ginger can help to ease if you've got some stomach discomfort from like post-nasal drip and that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of things that we can do. Chicken broth, vegetable broth, all of those. There's actually really good research even just into chicken noodle soup when you've got a respiratory illness, and the benefit of what that actually does for the immune system.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting as this is all so new, and I think that it's going to continue to feel new even when we get deeper into it. Just the other day, there's a wash of an article about you can't take ibuprofen if you have the coronavirus. It makes it worse. And I was like, now hold on a second. What just happened here? Like, I started thinking about the podcast a little bit. I was like, somebody stuck a pencil in their pocket, then robbed the bank and was like, you know what this pencil just made me do? And then it didn't take long for, I think, WHO to come out and say that ibuprofen is not a problem to take with the coronavirus, right? It is really one of the problems with social media. Is it just anybody really could say whatever they wanted, and if a person sees it and they're scared, they go back. So it's funny. We talked. I talked about having you on for this to talk about management during a respiratory illness, but I mean, what really changes in management? Not a whole lot, right?
Not a whole lot, honestly. Yeah. I mean, it's an illness.
Right.
And unless you have another background illness, such as, lung diseases, or, there are some people with type 1 who actually have type 1 because of something called cystic fibrosis, right? Which is already a lung disorder. So someone like that would have much more different management needs, even outside of the blood sugar component to it. So, but when we're talking just about diabetes management with a respiratory illness, there shouldn't be much that you don't know in your normal sick day packet of, check off, I got this, I got this, I got this.
So when this all started happening, I thought, let me put some information out that'll be helpful to people. And it was great to talk to Adam because he really did go over what the coronavirus is and what it is and all that stuff. But as we were talking, and as I've been thinking about it over the last number of days, I think the most important thing you can do about the coronavirus, whether you have type 1 diabetes or not, is be healthy, right? Like just be as healthy as you can be, because a healthy body does a better job of fighting off viruses and colds and all kinds of things.
Exactly.
And so then I'm just like, well, we're all locked up inside. Go back to episode 210 and start the pro tips over again. You know what I mean? Like get your blood sugar lower, stable, take out the variability. Move around a little bit, even though it's probably going to be in your living room for a while. Or go outside and go for a walk. Which, by the
way, we've got lots and lots of online videos now that are free workout options. Even my gym like stopped all of our memberships so that we would not like have to keep paying and not being able to go. But they also sent out a connection link for 150 workouts online that are free for us to use, which I thought that was a really nice thing just from a gym standpoint to do for its members. But there are 10-minute workouts, there are 30-minute workouts, there are, as long as you've got some equipment at home, you could even use your Peloton or whatever it is, So,
well, I think it's stay moving, stay healthy. Don't fall into like really poor diet habits because it's going to be easier. And I don't know how easy that's going to be to maintain over time. I don't know how easy getting food's going to be weeks from now. I'm sure it's going to get a little dicey at some point, maybe just because you're going to be scared to go outside. I don't know. But I don't think if you're really paying attention to the day-to-day numbers and not listening to political conversations around it, but actually seeing what, the CDC is saying, like those kinds of things, we are following the bend of that Italy was following. Like we're going to get a really big spike. There are a lot more people here. We are spread out further. We have population centers, not just one or two like smaller countries do. We have countless dozens of population centers. This is not ending anytime soon. If I had to bet money, I'd bet my kids aren't going back to school this year. I'd bet that things are going to change moving forward even. Yeah. You might start seeing work from home days for school in the future. And, I think the other thing that's going to happen here is we're going to learn a lot about things that we've been afraid to look at so far, like telemedicine. It's such a good example, right? You guys have been, who else is talking to people about their diabetes through video interaction, except for you. And now suddenly every doctor's office in the world is like, this is how you got to
figure this out.
Yeah, this is how you're going to the doctor now. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I think you have type 1.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing anything differently?
No.
I'm
really not. I mean, other than, in my diabetes management itself, no, I'm not. We have, all of the sick day things in the cupboard that we could possibly need. Mm-hmm. We actually went it was like 2 weeks ago before any of the school cancellation and anything of that nature. I was in the aisle just picking up some Band-Aids and I was like, let's just get some extra things.
Right.
Just like I could see what was sort of like coming down the line, right? So I got some extra, like cough medicine and that kind of stuff just to have. We've got popsicles in the freezer, all that kind of stuff. But other than that, my normal management I'm managing the same way. I'm trying to get exercise every day in my house, or going outside and taking a run with my dog or, whatever. I know some communities even have some restrictions on that, but we don't right now.
Right.
There are plenty of people, in fact, more people I think I've seen like, I have to get fresh air. Like, let me out of my house. I need fresh air.
So 2 days ago, Cole and I went to an outdoor cage so he could hit. And afterwards, no lie, his personality was brighter. He had more energy. He was smiling. Like he's not a person who wants to be trapped and sitting around. And you have to, almost the same as you sometimes can get lulled into being like, oh, 150 is a good blood sugar. 180 is not bad. 200 is not far from 150. You can start getting to the like, well, Doritos for lunch is fine today. 3 days a week with Doritos isn't bad. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I haven't moved around in a month, but I've only gained 6 pounds. Like you can like,
right.
You can
very
sort of just melt into that and slide into it and not know that it's happening to you. And then by the time it happens, you're having that conversation with yourself like, ooh, I've let things get out of hand. And then it's harder to get back from.
I do think, too, within that, from a management standpoint, we do have to consider some things that if and when you can get to the grocery store, right? Because you're probably not going every other day or, every 3 days. Oh, I just need to pick up the milk today, or I just need to do it. You're like, okay, everything on my list, I can get it. And hopefully this will be stockpiled for like 2 weeks before I have to go back, running in and out again. So from the standpoint of diabetes management, it's then making sure your list is full of all those things that keep you in line.
Mm-hmm.
And it might even come down to making some more soups or making some more things that do last a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. I know fresh fruits and vegetables, we have to go shopping either today or tomorrow. Someone in our house, myself or my husband has to go because we're out of those. We've got some frozen stuff, but other than that, our fresh is gone. And I like living on my fresh.
Yeah. Well, listen, so I'm one of those people who usually goes grocery shopping like every few days. I'd much rather like bang in and grab that's how I like to keep the food fresh in the house. I don't want to grab, a ton of vegetables. I grab enough to get me through a couple of days. That's obviously a little upside down right now and might not be going as well. The other day we ate leftovers that I think in a regular situation, I would have been like, you know what? Let's toss these out and start over again. But I was like, no, eat this. Right. Like this is it's another meal. Like, let's get another meal in. Prior to all of this, I guess not really prior to it. Maybe I just paid attention to it a little sooner. I ordered everything that Arden had a refill for. I refilled. I'm starting to think I should have gotten Traceba too, just in case she, I don't know what, just in case 3 months from now, other stuff starts happening. Meanwhile, pump companies, Dexcom, they all say like, we don't see this affecting our supply. But what if it's not them? What if it's delivery? Or, what if it's FedEx or, whatever it ends up being? So I got all of our supplies restocked, and I buy these juice boxes online that come in a big flat. And I was like, I'm going to get 2 of them. Like Arden could get low, like, I don't know, 150 times and I'd be okay,
Right, right.
Which I don't think she'll get low.
Well, because you also have a juice box that works very well for her. Yeah. And others don't. So you know what works, and, you kind of stockpile, put it away. I know my glucose tablets that I really like to use have been out of stock online for quite a while.
Right.
And so when I went to pick up my last insulin fill at the pharmacy, I grabbed 2 bottles of the only kind of that pharmacy brand glucose tablet that doesn't have artificial colors or anything in it.
Yeah.
I grabbed 2 of them, and I actually, if I don't hide them, my kids will eat them.
That's funny.
So I was like, let's hide these way away so nobody else knows where Jenny's supply is.
I think, I am not an alarmist person at all, and I think this is going to be fine. Like, I think this is going to be it's going to run a natural course. People are going to die. It's not going to be pleasant. I think we're all going to know somebody who died from the coronavirus next year. But at the same time, I did say to Kelly last night, I was like, let's start thinking more long-term around Arden. Like that was the only thing I've said about diabetes so far. Like, I don't know what that means exactly, but let's always be thinking months in advance, not days in advance about Arden. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, I'm not worried. I'm just thinking we should change our focus a little bit.
Right.
So, I did my best a week or so ago. I put up on my social media, I was like, listen, if you have refills, fill them.
Do it now. Yeah, absolutely. I know. That's actually one of the things that I also went through. Even my husband, who pretty much leaves my diabetes management to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless I'm like, I need help with this, or, can you pinch my skin back here to put the Dexcom in or whatever? For the most part, it's all my management. But he even came to me, he's like, you sure you're okay on all of your supplies? You got enough insulin, you got enough of your pods, you got enough, everything. And I was like, yeah, I'm really good for, he's like, how many months? I'm like, probably at least 4 months. I'm pretty good before I'd have to, like, even maybe more than that, quite honestly. The biggest one is sensors, because I can't get more sensors other than what my insurance will cover.
That's
for
all
me.
mine would do. Yeah.
I can't. The one thing to my pump right now is that I'm kind of training on the Control IQ with Tandem. So right now my pods are not being used.
So you have a little extra.
I got a little extra there, which is kind of nice.
Jenny's like, I got to figure this other pump out for my job, so my pumps are sitting in a pile and not getting used up.
That's right. My Riley Link gets a little break, and so
it's funny. Yeah, a little extra stuff here and there.
Right.
Little stuff off to the side if you can afford to grab it. It really does make you think about the people who can afford it, who are paying cash, or just that horrible. It's got to be in the back of all of our heads somewhere, right? That if I don't want to be like I'm not a doom and gloom person, but I do think this, and I've thought this before coronavirus. Society is a paper tiger. It really is just holding together because we all agree to let it hold together.
Right.
Right. It's, I don't walk across the street with a bat kick my neighbor's front door down and steal his television just because we've agreed basically not to do that to each other.
That's not right.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's assumed that if you get sick, you go to a doctor helps you. Even if you don't have insurance, someone will help you, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden your doctors are like, look, call us on the phone. Don't come here. The grocery store's always got food, right? Not now.
Right now.
It will again, but it doesn't right now. And it makes you think like bigger picture. Like what it makes you realize is that 10 pretty smart people who were writers sat in a room one day and said, what would it be like if zombies came? And then they wrote what they thought would happen. And, that's probably pretty close to what's going to happen. It's just where human nature takes us in these situations. The toilet paper is a great example, right?
Yeah.
People are afraid. What makes them feel better? Control. Having enough toilet paper feels like control. It seems silly right now, but it's true. It gives you some feeling of control. I filled Arden's prescriptions and got more juice boxes, and I bought, I got the Gvoke, stuff like that. And that makes me feel like it's okay. And it is okay unless, people just decide to be lunatics, and then I don't know what happens next, and none of us do it. Right. And that's the real, that's scary for every living person, but more so for a person who has type 1 or has something else who is really reliant on these things working, on the traffic lights going on when they say they're going to, that stuff that we just take for granted. The best thing you can do is be prepared and do your best and not lose your mind.
Correct.
Don't go barging through people's doors with the bat.
Right. Give me that.
It's so funny. This must have been in the consciousness a month or so ago. Because Arden came up to me 6 weeks ago, and just out of the blue, she goes, "Hey, the zombies come. What happens to me?" And I was like, so...
Just a random teenager kind of idea about things.
And she wasn't really talking about zombies. She was like, hey, if stuff gets upside down, with the diabetes, what happens? It was like the first time she ever asked. And I said, well, in truth, I said, if things really got sideways, I guess I would throw my morals away, go down to the corner and overpower as many people as I could and take as much insulin as I could for you. If we're into the apocalypse situation, if that's what you're talking about. I said, we'd lower your carb intake, which I don't think would be trouble because I don't think we'd have food. Eventually I'd try to keep the insulin cold. You'd run out of it eventually. And she goes, how long? And I'm like, he'd be dead a couple weeks, a month later, probably. And she goes, okay, that's what I thought. And I was like, all right, right on. And then we just sort of walked out of the room. Yeah. It's just, she wanted to know. And I don't think she'd ever said it out loud. I think she knew, but she never said it out loud. Like, what happens if these mechanisms go away from me? I was like, that's pretty much it. I was like, some of the Egyptians stayed alive a really long time. I was like, they did. Yeah. I mean, how long do you think you could eat kale before you just gave up?
I don't know. There are lots of ways to cook kale. I like my kale. I don't know. Either that or, the other thing to possibly do is maybe, get your own pig farm started and then read up on the directions about how to make your own insulin and your, pig farm out of the pigs that you're growing in your backyard. Or
I'll tell you what, if that kid's hanging her hat on me figuring that out, she's in trouble. I could maybe do a podcast about it, but I don't think anybody would care.
Right.
No, but anyway, I don't think of that as, I didn't think of that as a sad thing. She just wanted to understand her reality. She got to an age where she was like, hey, just real quick,
right.
What is this about? And it's not something I was talking about. Maybe she was hearing something at school or I don't know where it came from, honestly, but I wasn't going to lie to her,
right.
And I wasn't going to just be like, that'll never happen. I mean,
because who knows? We don't know what the future is. In any circumstance, even without this, we don't know what the future necessarily will bring. And
if it happens, you're not going to stop it if it's happening. You know what I mean? And I told her, I was like, look, I said, she goes, do you think it'll happen? And I said, no. And she said, why? I said, greed. And she goes, what? I'm like, we live in a capitalist society. Everybody wants things. The only way they get things is to go to work. They want to go to work. They want to make money. They want to have things. I was like, it's what keeps people chugging along. It's what keeps insulin being made and insulin pumps being, people, I think there was a guy one day who was like, I could make a better insulin pump. I bet you I could do this without tubing. And he made it. And then he turned it into a business. And I was like, that's what keeps society moving. People's desire to do things, have things, be alive. Right. You know what I mean? I was like, everyone's desire to be alive is going to be why you're going to have insulin and pumps and needles and whatever else you need. And I said, so while I can think about your little scenario here that you've made up in your head, I don't believe that's going to happen. No. So we'll see. Even with this, it's going to pass. There'll be a day in the future where you'll say to somebody, do you remember that coronavirus thing?
Right.
Wasn't that crazy?
Right. Exactly. You're right. But in terms of even like your daughter's question, I think you also, you kind of we've already talked about like the supply component, but the going back to like the age old management strategy, like maybe your technology dies and you can't get a replacement for it. Do you know what to do to go back to an injection? Right. Do you have pens? Do you have syringes? Do you have, your vials? Do you know how to use them? Do you know what your doses are?
Yeah.
All of those things they should be in your marked down list of, I would know how to do this if this happened, or if this failed, I could go to this parameter. If this failed, I could go down to this like 1940s way of managing,
Well, I thought about it last night, and we don't have slow acting insulin in the house. And I thought she'd get stuck a lot, but I could do it with just her Apidra. Like, I know I could, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be perfect, but it would be, she'd be alive.
She would be alive.
Yeah. And in enough time to go get some slow acting insulin somewhere.
Right.
But I think I could do it, and it's just, there's a certain, I'm thinking I would probably create layers with boluses, like, like just, put in a bolus, think about where it peaks, probably right at the peak time, put in more, and just keep those like dolphins, like flying through.
You'd almost have to do your own little like graphical chart of, I dosed it here, it should be done here. I dosed it here, it should be done here. Right. You kind of have to keep track that way mentally to not drive yourself like insane with a chart in your brain.
but in my mind, if I know when it goes in, I know when it peaks, and I know when it crashes, then I can put the next one in and create the next peak at the crash, and just keep the peaks covering the crashes. And that should make a reasonably level amount of insulin the whole time. So,
and that would work for somebody who has looked at and truly understands the total action time of their rapid insulin.
I've been doing this podcast for a while.
And you do. And I would say, Scott definitely could do that. If you have not really ever figured that out, probably not.
I'm thinking a lot of people might kill themselves doing it. But I think
to do that.
Yeah. Oh, this is definitely one of those episodes where nothing you hear on the Juicebox podcast should be considered advice.
Medical advice.
Right. But I was really, that's what I was thinking about the other night. Like, would there be a way to bump insulin in over and over again so that she didn't find herself without insulin or didn't find herself with too much?
Right.
And I don't know. I think I could figure it out. But, again, it's because I can be dispassionate about it. It's not me. If I had diabetes, this is what it would sound like. Jenny, I don't know what I would do. If I didn't have slow acting insulin, I'd probably just run around the house till I hit a wall and just passed out, So it's an interesting thing when it's for someone else.
Because you can step back and you can look at it.
Out of it for a second.
Yeah.
And you don't have that panic of that your health is on the line.
But overall, you should run to the pharmacy and you should get some.
Well, Jenny, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to send an email when we're done to Arden's endo, and I'm going to ask for some slow acting insulin.
There you go.
And I guess maybe two.
You'll have a backup.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do, and that's what we should all be doing, right? It's just preparing.
Just prepare. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So, did we learn today that at the moment, with the information that we have, that a person with type 1 diabetes and the coronavirus is going to get some level of sick, and they're going to manage their type 1 the way they would if they got any other virus? And
in a normal illness, yes, exactly. And I would think, unless you're really newly diagnosed and you've been a fairly healthy person outside of the diabetes and you've never really managed an illness with diabetes yet, then sure, it will be very new for you and it's going to be kind of scary, but the biggest thing really is looking at the glucose levels, looking where they're going and seeing, gosh, I'm, 75, 100 points higher than I normally run. Clearly, I need more insulin. Clearly, I need to put some more in. So even with that, it's
Jenny, what's your level of commitment to the podcast? Are you willing to get the coronavirus so we can talk about what it's like to have type 1? No.
Sorry.
I can't get you to go lick a couple of handrails or something like that.
No. I'm not going to go hang out at UW Hospital. No, sorry.
Oh my gosh. Do you think healthcare workers who are in situations where they may be more susceptible, do you think they should step back from their jobs? Like, what would you do if you were in a hospital right now working?
So, given my profession, I know that my position would have been not necessarily cut, but I would have probably been sent home because I would have been outpatient. I wouldn't have been necessary to be there, right? Okay. If I were a nurse or a doctor or any other profession that's absolutely needed. Yeah. I mean, we need people. I mean, what would happen with all the sick people if all the doctors were like, or all the nurses were like, nope, I'm just going to go hang out at home. I can't get sick. Right. I can't do this. I would have to say that I would do my job. Yeah, it's a very. I would, even if I had, people at home as I do little kids, a husband, or if I had, an elderly parent or grandparent or something living, I guess I would just live at the hospital then. Yeah. So I wouldn't come home with it, Yeah,
we're in a situation now where everybody's got to row the boat. Whatever oar they have in their hand, they need to use. And it's very similar, when you think about police officers, right? Or EMS or firemen. What are they just going to be like? Oh, your house got on fire. Pfft, I don't know if you have the coronavirus or not, so we're just going to let it burn. Like at some point there are a lot actually of professions that just, you don't get to think about yourself first. No. Like that's, what ends up happening.
They're kind of, you're doing social good by continuing to do what you professionally chose to do. It is. I mean,
well, when I was speaking to Adam, the one thing I said that was interesting that I've kind of noticed from afar is that we have set up a society that, for the most part, for most people, goes the way you want it to go. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of, like, I remember my parents, talking about getting a car and it taking them 7 years to get money for a car. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're going to get a new car one day. They never got a new car. They would always get a newer car.
Right.
But no one ever woke up and was like, oh, I will just take out a loan and then I will buy this car. And then I don't need the money today. I'll give it to them. Like we've set up a situation where if you have any kind of income and need something, you probably can get it. And then that goes for entertainment as well, right? Our entertainment is amazing now. Like we're all at the point now where we're like, Disney Plus, nothing on here I want to watch. Do you know? Like we're a little spoiled, right?
Right.
This is the first time in my generation, and definitely in my children's, where someone said that, no, you're being limited and there's no alternative, right? You just have to do this.
Right.
It's very interesting. And people are so far, I think, doing a really good job with it.
Yeah.
I don't see people freaking out or anything like that.
I think it's hard even from the child standpoint, though. Our kids have gotten so used to social interaction, right? I mean, very minimal numbers of kids are homeschooled these days. I've got a couple of clients who I work with who they do homeschool their children. Yeah. And I've actually emailed, I'm like, I bet you're glad that you've been doing the homeschooling. You know exactly how to do this. I, however, do not. Yeah. So
no idea what's going on.
Arden. But I mean, we've been after school or after I'm done with work in the afternoons now, we've actually just been getting in a car and going and taking a drive around the city just to physically get out.
Change the
visual and change and see that, the world is still there. Everything is still in place. Right. It's just that we've got limited interaction.
Right. It really is. We're all just trying to
stay away from each other so that we don't overwhelm the healthcare system.
Right.
That is
and for
literally what this is
explaining to
about.
kids, it's also something for explaining to, I mean, you know, with a 7 and a 3-year-old, they don't really quite understand, you know, why can't we go to the coffee shop and get a flourless cookie? Why can't we, you know, well, they're closed. So we drive past the coffee shop. You have to kind of visually explain to many younger kids and, well, it's closed. You know, we can't go in. See, all the chairs are up. But why, Mommy? Can't we get a morning muffin? Let's go home and let's make morning muffins. So now we have morning muffins sitting on the counter in the kitchen because we made them yesterday.
That's excellent. Hey, I had that conversation with my 20-year-old son. I was like, listen, you can't play basketball, and here's why. Because do you want to wonder for the rest of your life if your buddy's grandmother dropped dead because you had to go play basketball? You know, I'm like, just go outside, you have a net, and play by yourself. And that's what this is going to be for a little while. It's tough because it isn't hard to look at what you're missing. Like, I watched kids on my son's baseball team and every baseball team who were seniors, who were eight games into their season, be told, that's it. You're never going to play college baseball again. Say goodbye to everybody and get back on the plane and go home.
Yeah,
and
that's hard.
It was really interesting. All these kids who aren't going to graduate from high school at a ceremony maybe, or from their college, you know, that's all terrible. Right. But like I said, I think one day it'll just be a story you tell people, you know, like, remember the time. I'll tell you this, and I mean this. I said this to Kelly last night. I was like, we are parenting through. Our parents never had anything like this that I can remember that they had to be parents through. And my wife's like, my parents just sent us outside anyway. We'd be dead. They'd be like, go outside and play, you know? So I really feel like we're going to be professional parents when this is over, like really good at it. Because this is another level, Jenny.
That's really funny. I said that to Nathan the other day. I said, this is really kind of it's a social experiment in teaching people who've been so used to, and nothing against it. This is the way that society works, because moms and dads all have jobs now, and you send your child to daycare or you send your child to school. It's teaching parents what it actually means to like spend majority of your time interacting with your child.
I wonder how
somebody else isn't raising your child.
Yeah.
Somebody else isn't teaching them. It's on you now 100%. And that's hard.
Yeah. I've raised 2 kids as a stay-at-home parent. And that means you get up in the morning and you're with them 24 hours a day, and it gets long after a while. And you really have to have the fortitude to just push through and find the good in what you're doing and not make it feel like, oh my God, this is my whole life, like that whole thing. But I'm wondering how many people will try to go back to a single like income. Like, how many people are going to like this and think, oh, this is nice, you know?
Right.
And they never thought it was possible.
I didn't know my kid could do this, or I didn't know I liked doing this type of thing with my child, or look how good my child is at like reading, and we can read together and we can learn all these things. I mean, I think of all the like books that hopefully people are reading and the games that they're getting out of the closet that have cobwebs on them, and like, because especially with kids, you know, specifically, as you know, you have to entertain them up to a certain age. You kind of have to do the entertaining.
Yeah. I've got my pile of books right here. I'm hoping.
Yeah,
I really am. With my fingers crossed. So stay healthy, keep your blood sugar stable. I think the other thing we didn't say that I think is really important is get sleep, and
drink water.
Yeah, and try not to make yourself nuts. Like, stressed people don't sleep well. People who don't sleep well don't fight off colds well. Like, the things you can really do is, you know, take care of your health, get some sleep, you keep your stress down, and, you know.
And some of that keeping your stress down ultimately is just keeping as much normal in your day as possible.
Yeah.
You know, you get up every day at 7 o'clock, keep getting up at 7 o'clock.
Right.
If you always have tea at 9 o'clock, keep having your tea at 9 o'clock. You know, it's just keeping some of those normal scheduled things helps to keep the stress level down too.
I think too, if you're working from home, I know everyone's interested, but don't leave like cable news on 24 hours a day in the background, because they're repeating the same thing over and over again, and it's getting into your brain. So
right. Yeah.
All right, Jenny. I appreciate you doing this, and I hope you guys all stay healthy there. And
I hope you do too.
Thank you. Hopefully this will help some other people do the same.
I hope so.
Going to read to you from the CDC website for a second. Older adults and people who have severe underlying chronic medical conditions like heart
or lung disease or diabetes seem to be at a higher risk for developing more serious complications from COVID-19 illness. Please consult with your healthcare provider about additional steps you may be able to take to protect yourself. The site goes on to remind us to stay home if you're sick, but I think at this point, travel bans are starting to go into place as I'm recording this on March 20th. So, that may just be a given at this point. Cover your coughs and your sneezes. Cover your mouth and nose with a tissue when you cough or sneeze, or use the inside of your elbow. Throw used tissues into the trash. Immediately wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. If soap and water are not readily available, clean your hands with sanitizer that contains at least a 60% alcohol. If you are sick, you should wear a face mask when you're around other people, even if you're sharing a room or a vehicle with them, or before entering a healthcare provider's office. If you are not able to wear a face mask, for example, because it causes trouble with breathing, then you should do your best to cover your coughs and sneezes. And people who are caring for you should wear a face mask when they enter the room with you. If you're not sick, you do not need to wear a face mask unless you are caring for someone who is sick and they are not able to wear a face mask. Face masks may be in short supply and should be saved for caregivers. Around the home, clean and disinfect. This includes tables, doorknobs, light switches, countertops, handles, desks, phones, keyboards, toilets, faucets, and sinks. If surfaces are dirty, clean them. Use detergent or soap and water prior to disinfecting. The CDC goes on to tell you about disinfecting. Most common EPA-registered household disinfectants will work. Use disinfectants appropriate for the surface. Options could include diluting your household bleach. To make a bleach solution, mix 5 tablespoons or 1/3 of a cup of bleach per gallon of water, 4 teaspoons of bleach to a quart of water. Don't forget the manufacturer's instructions about proper ventilation when you're using bleach. And if you're going to use an alcohol solution to kill bacteria or the virus, ensure that it has at least a 70% alcohol content. This is all available at cdc.gov. There's guidance from the CDC around the 15 days to slow the spread. Listen to and follow all directions for your state and local authorities. If you feel sick, stay home. Do not go to work. Contact your medical provider. If your children are sick, keep them at home. Do not send them to school. Well, I think that cat's out of the bag too, around most of the country. Contact your medical provider. If someone in your household has tested positive for the coronavirus, keep the entire household at home. Do not go to work. Do not go to school. Contact your medical provider. If you're an older person, stay home and away from other people. And if you are a person with a serious underlying health condition that can put you at an increased risk, for example, a condition that impairs your lung or heart function or weakens your immune system, stay home and away from other people. Okay, so here are my plans for the podcast. Next week, there'll be 2 episodes that are just stories from people with type 1 diabetes, stuff that's more entertaining. We're going to do some after dark stuff, stuff to keep your mind off things, keep you entertained. I will come back with coronavirus information whenever it's necessary. Dr. Nadelman will come back on. Jenny and I will talk again, but the podcast is going to be here for you. I'm trying to figure out how to do a live chat for us all. So if people just need to feel a little less alone, they can get together and talk. That'll probably happen through the Facebook page, so keep an eye there, perhaps even Instagram. And I'm looking for a way to bring everybody in, maybe in a third-party platform. I'm doing my best on that. The Juicebox Podcast will run as scheduled. It's not going to go away. And I appreciate that you guys are such supportive listeners. I hope this information has been valuable for you. Please, just use your common sense. Stay well, stay away from people. Don't touch things. Wash your hands. Be cognizant of your surroundings. Do your best to stay safe. Do your best to stay healthy. If you feel sick in any way, please contact your physician immediately. I'm going to read you one last thing. The symptoms of coronavirus. People may be sick with the virus for 1 to 14 days before developing symptoms. The most common symptoms of coronavirus disease, the COVID-19 virus, are fever, tiredness, and a dry cough. Most people, about 80%, recover from the disease without needing special treatment. More rarely, the disease can be serious and even fatal. Older people and people with other medical conditions such as asthma, diabetes, or heart disease may be more vulnerable to becoming severely ill. People may experience cough, fever, tiredness, difficulty breathing in severe cases. Now, having that in your head, don't forget what Jenny and I talked about today. if you're a healthy person, if your blood sugars are well maintained, you don't fall into that category just because you have type 1 diabetes. Be healthy, keep your routine going, keep your mind fresh, get some fresh air, try not to go crazy in your house a little bit. You're going to be okay. The Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Omnipod, Dexcom, Touched by Type 1, and the Contour Next One blood glucose meter. You can go to contournext1.com, touchedbytype1.org, myomnipod.com/juicebox, or dexcom.com/juicebox to learn more about the sponsors. There are links in your show notes and at juiceboxpodcast.com if you can't remember those links. Now might be the perfect time to check into some new gear, the stuff you've been thinking about getting. I mean, you got a lot of time to read up, right? I genuinely meant what I said to Jenny earlier. I'm not just trying to get you to listen to the podcast more. If you want to work on your variability, if you want to work on keeping your blood sugars more stable, go back to episode 210 of the podcast and listen to the diabetes pro tips again. You can figure it out if you're struggling. And if you knew what you were doing in the past, but you've sort of burned out a little bit, these podcast episodes can help bring you back around again. I want to wish you all a ton of success. I'm going to see you soon. You guys are going to be okay. I'm going to be okay. We're all going to be okay.